What if I told you that every single country on this planet is buried in debt, but nobody can actually tell you who they owe it to? Sounds impossible, right? But here's what's even crazier. The United States is drowning in over $38 trillion of debt. Japan, almost $10 trillion. The European Union, another $14 trillion. Even wealthy oil kingdoms and manufacturing giants owe massive amounts of money. So here's the question that should keep you up at night. If literally everyone owes money, who exactly is getting paid? Welcome to Monetary Archaeologist, where we dig through the layers of financial history to uncover truths they don't teach you in school. Today, we're excavating the biggest financial mystery of our time. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at money the same way again. Let's dig in. Picture this. You're sitting at a table with 5 friends. Everyone at the table owes money. Sarah owes money. Mike owes money. Everyone around that table is in debt. Now here's the weird part. Nobody at that table can point to someone and say, "I owe you." That's basically the situation we have with global debt right now. The total debt on planet Earth has exploded past $315 trillion. Let me put that in perspective for you. That's nearly 3 times the value of everything the entire world produces in a year. Every product, every service, every single thing humanity creates, multiply that by 3, and you're getting close to how much debt exists. America alone has added more than $10 trillion to its debt in just the last few years. That number keeps climbing so fast that by the time you finish watching this video, it'll be millions of dollars higher. But here's where it gets strange. When we dig deeper and ask, okay, who's holding all these IOUs? Who's actually owed this money? The answer gets fuzzy, real fast. You might think it's China, right? Everyone says America owes China. And sure, China holds about $800 billion in US debt. That sounds enormous. But do the math. That's only about 2% of America's total debt. 2%. Japan actually holds more than China. And you know who holds even more than Japan? America itself. That's right. Most of the money America owes, it owes to Americans. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and even the government's own Federal Reserve. It's like discovering that the person you owe rent to is actually your future self. The whole thing runs in a circle. And this isn't just an American thing. This is happening everywhere. Japan lends money to the United States. The United States lends money to Europe through organizations like the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries through the World Bank. And those developing countries, they turn around and park their savings right back in American and European bonds. It's like a global game of musical chairs, except nobody ever sits down. Everyone just keeps passing money around in circles, and as long as the music keeps playing, everything seems fine. But what happens when the music stops? To answer that, we need to go back in time. We need to excavate the origin of this whole system. And like most massive financial systems, it started with something simple: war. Let's travel back to 1694. England and France are locked in yet another brutal war. And England has a serious problem. They're running out of gold. Back then, if you wanted to fight a war, you needed gold, lots of it, to pay soldiers, build ships, buy weapons. But the king's treasure chest was nearly empty. So the king did something revolutionary. He went to the wealthy merchants and made them a deal. Lend me money now, and I promise the government will pay you interest forever. Not just me, but every king after me. This is backed by future taxes we'll collect from the people. The merchants agreed. And to manage this new arrangement, they created a new institution, the Bank of England. This was the birth of something that would change the world, the government bond. Think about how wild this concept is. Before this moment, debt was personal. If you borrowed money and didn't pay it back, you could be thrown in prison or worse. But now the government could borrow money it didn't have, spend it immediately, and promise to pay it back someday. Maybe. Probably never actually. But they definitely pay the interest. And here's the genius part. That government IOU could be bought and sold like property. It became an asset, a tradable piece of paper that represented a promise. France saw this and copied it. The Netherlands refined it. When America fought for independence, they used the exact same system to fund their revolution. Suddenly, empires didn't need to conquer land to get rich. They just needed to be trusted enough to borrow. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. The battlefield shifted from territory to balance sheets. Fast forward through the centuries, and this system spread across the entire planet. Every major country adopted it. Every economy became dependent on it. And the numbers got bigger and bigger and bigger. By the 20th century, debt wasn't a sign of weakness anymore. It was a sign of power. The countries that could borrow the most money at the cheapest rates were considered the most stable, the most trustworthy, the most powerful. America became the king of this system. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, and US government bonds became the safest investment on planet Earth. But here's what they don't tell you in history class. This whole system only works because of one thing. Not gold, not laws, not military might, belief. As long as everyone believes the system works, it works. The moment that belief cracks, everything falls apart. And we've seen it crack before. All right, let's get specific. Let's excavate exactly where America's $38 trillion in debt actually lives. Imagine you're a detective and you're trying to follow the money trail. Who's holding the other end of the rope? About half of that $38 trillion is what they call publicly held debt. That means it's owed to actual investors, people and institutions who bought government bonds. Now, out of those investors, about 2/3 are American. Banks hold a big chunk. Pension funds, yeah, your retirement account probably owns some US debt. Mutual funds, insurance companies. And here's the really weird part, the Federal Reserve, which is basically part of the government, holds over $5 trillion of the government's own debt. Let that sink in. The government owes money to itself. The remaining third, about $9 trillion, is held by foreign countries. Japan leads the pack with roughly $1 trillion. China, as we mentioned, holds about $800 billion. Then you've got the United Kingdom, Luxembourg, Belgium, and others. So when politicians talk about being in debt to China, yeah, it's technically true, but it's like saying you're in debt to the guy who bought 2% of your lemonade stand. Accurate, but misleading. The vast majority of America's debt is held by Americans, who collect interest payments funded by American taxpayers. It's a loop, a closed circle, a financial Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. But let's zoom out even further, because this pattern repeats globally. Europe borrows. Their citizens' pension funds often buy that debt. Those same pension funds also buy American debt and Asian debt. And everyone's buying everyone else's debt. It's like the entire planet is playing an endless game of I owe you owe them, they owe us. The global financial system has become one giant web of interconnected promises. Pull on one thread and the whole thing trembles. And sitting in the middle of this web, pulling the strings, central banks. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan. These institutions don't just manage debt, they create it. Here's how. When a central bank wants to stimulate the economy, it buys government bonds. But where does it get the money to buy those bonds? It just creates it, out of thin air, electronically, with a keystroke. The government gets money to spend. The central bank gets an asset on its balance sheet. And the amount of money in circulation increases. Every dollar in your pocket, every euro, every yen, it exists because somewhere, someone went into debt. There is no such thing as debt-free money in the modern system. Money is debt. Debt is money. They're the same thing. This is the machine that runs the world, and most people have no idea it exists. But here's where it gets even stranger. Nobody actually plans to pay any of this back.
When you or I take out a loan for a car, a house, college, we're expected to pay back the principal, the actual amount we borrowed. But governments, they don't operate that way. Think about it. When was the last time you heard a politician say, "Great news, everyone, we paid off $1 trillion of the national debt"? Never, because it doesn't happen. And here's the shocking part. It's not supposed to. Modern governments don't plan to pay off their debt, ever. They plan to refinance it, forever. Here's how it works. Let's say a government bond is coming due, meaning the government has to pay it back. What do? They issue a new bond to pay off the old one. It's like using one credit card to pay off another.
Except when governments do it, economists call it smart fiscal policy. The goal isn't to eliminate the debt. The goal is to keep it sustainable, to keep the interest payments manageable, to keep investors confident enough that they'll keep buying new bonds. Japan is the perfect example. Their national debt is over 250% of their entire economy. That means they owe more than twice what their whole country produces in a year. And yet, their interest rates are near zero. Investors still line up to lend the money. Why? Because the market believes Japan will keep making interest payments. Not that they'll pay off the debt. Everyone knows that's not happening. But they'll keep the system going. This is the dirty secret of modern finance. Government debt is designed to be permanent. And before you think, that sounds like a scam, consider this. If the United States actually tried to pay off all its debt, the global economy would collapse. Here's why. U.S. Treasury bonds are considered the safest asset in the world. Banks use them as collateral. Pension funds depend on them for steady returns. Central banks hold them as reserves. If the U.S. suddenly paid everything off, trillions of dollars in the safest assets on Earth would vanish overnight. Banks would lose their collateral. Pension funds would scramble for alternatives. The money supply would shrink dramatically. It would trigger deflation, panic, and economic chaos. So the system requires governments to stay in debt. The debt itself has become the foundation of the entire financial world. It's like discovering that the building you're standing in is held up by the weight of the floor above it. Remove that weight and everything collapses. This is why politicians who promise to balance the budget or pay down the debt are either lying or don't understand the system they're part of. The machine isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. The debt will never be repaid. It will be rolled over, refinanced, and expanded. Forever. As long as confidence holds. But confidence isn't distributed equally. And that brings us to the most important question of all. Here's the part they really don't want you to understand. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's technically true for many countries, but it's also massively misleading. Because who exactly is ourselves? The average person doesn't own government bonds. They pay taxes. Those taxes go toward paying interest on the national debt. And that interest? It flows to whoever holds the bonds. Banks, hedge funds, insurance companies, wealthy investors, foreign governments. So what actually happens is this. Money flows up. Workers and middle-class taxpayers fund the interest payments. Those payments go to the institutions and individuals wealthy enough to own large amounts of government debt. It's a transfer system, from the many to the few, from labor to capital, from the bottom to the top. And it's not a bug, it's a feature. Global debt and global inequality have risen together for decades. This isn't a coincidence. The system rewards people who own debt and punishes people who only pay it. The same pattern plays out between countries too. Developing nations borrow from institutions like the IMF and World Bank. When they can't pay, they're forced into austerity, cutting public spending, raising taxes, selling off public assets. Meanwhile, wealthy nations borrow even more and face no consequences. Why? Because the system trusts them. Because they control the currencies. Because they write the rules.
We saw this in Greece in 2010. The government couldn't pay its debts. The economy collapsed. Unemployment skyrocketed. An entire generation was sacrificed. Not because Greece was uniquely irresponsible, but because when you're small and powerless, the system doesn't protect you. It extracts from you. We've seen it in Argentina, in Sri Lanka, in dozens of countries that get trapped in cycles of debt, default, and desperation. But when a major power like the United States or Japan runs up massive debts, the rules change. The debt gets refinanced. Interest rates stay low. The system bends to accommodate them, because if they fall, the whole game ends. So the global debt system isn't just about money. It's about power. Who has it, who doesn't, and who gets to decide when the rules apply. So let's come back to our original question. If everyone owes money, who's the creditor? After all this digging, here's what we've uncovered. The creditor is the system itself. It's not a person. It's not a country. It's a web of institutions, agreements, and beliefs that spans the entire planet. Governments issue debt. Banks multiply it through lending. Investors trade them. Central banks backstop it. And ordinary people, through taxes, savings, and pensions, are tangled up in every part of it. We're all debtors. We're all creditors.
And we're all trapped in a machine that only works if nobody questions it too loudly. Debt used to mean obligation, something owed, something that had to be repaid. But in the modern world, debt has become something else entirely. It's become the operating system of the global economy. It's not designed to be repaid. It's designed to grow, to circulate, to create the illusion of wealth while transferring real power upward. And it works beautifully until it doesn't. Because this entire system runs on one fragile thing: confidence. Confidence that governments will keep making payments. Confidence that central banks will step in during crises. Confidence that the currency you're holding today will still have value tomorrow. But confidence is a tricky thing. It can evaporate in an instant. When people lose faith in a currency, it becomes worthless overnight. When investors lose faith in a government, interest rates spike and economies implode. When the system loses faith in itself, well, we don't really know what happens then, because it hasn't happened yet. But history gives us clues. Every empire that relied on debt eventually collapsed. Rome, Spain, Britain. They all believed their systems were permanent too. The difference today is that the system is global. There's no outside, no backup, no alternative waiting in the wings. If this system fails, it doesn't just take down one country, it takes down everyone. So what's the takeaway here? Understanding this system won't make you rich overnight, but it will make you aware, and awareness is power. You now know that national debt isn't what they tell you it is. It's not a burden we're passing to our grandchildren. It's a feature of the financial architecture that holds up everything. You know that money itself is just formalized debt. Every dollar is someone's IOU. You know that the system isn't designed to be fair. It's designed to perpetuate itself. And those who understand it benefit. Those who don't, pay. Most importantly, you know that the people in charge aren't trying to fix the debt. They're trying to manage it, to keep the game going, to make sure confidence never breaks. Because the moment people stop believing in the system, the debt stops being an abstraction and becomes what it always was, a promise that can't be kept. If this video gave you a new way of looking at money, power, and history, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Because here at Monetary Archaeologist, we dig deeper than the headlines. We uncover the financial truths buried beneath the surface. And trust me, we're just getting started. I'll see you in the next excavation.